time for Legal Help Live. You got Ralph here, you got Steve there. We're the Legal Help Live team. We're answering your legal questions, but first you got to call us at 1-800-405-4222. That is a toll-free number. That's how you get in to ask that legal question, to get that legal answer. And Steve, you know, recently we did something that was kind of nice, and I think we should do it again.
Yeah.
Everybody who calls in gets on the air, asks a legal question, gets a legal answer, will get a gift certificate for dinner or lunch for two at a restaurant of Steve's and my choice.
You know, what are you doing in a suit and tie? That's my first question.
I didn't want you to outdress me today.
No. We dressed up for the holidays, or we dressed up for something or other. But I always thought that ties were discriminatory because the only people I see wearing ties are people working in toll booths, people working collecting parking meters.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about our men and women in
full dress uniform.
But that's something different. But what anybody believes is constitutional to make someone wear a tie.
Well, I don't even know, where did this come from? Whose idea was this? I mean, these are nice ties, but
from lynchings or something.
You think this is
pretty horrible situation?
Originated in the gallows.
So if you've got a legal question, anything from whether or not it's appropriate to have group living homes in a residential area for alleged drug addicts, whether or not people who are convicted child molesters should be able to live in your neighborhood, and whether or not you can picket in front of their house, and whether it's constitutional to do that.
How about if somebody who has to register as a mentally disordered sex offender, how about if, can they go to a park? Can they just visit a park just like anybody else?
Or if they're on the register and you find out about it, can you write it up and circulate it to everyone in the community saying, this person's a sexual deviant, this one's a child molester, we don't want you living in our neighborhood. Are you liable for that? Should you be liable for that? What about the sober living homes where zoning says that there shall be
single-family residents?
Single-family residents.
And you find 15 people
or
living in 6
people,
bedrooms.
It's usually 6 or
Okay.
under, living in a residential neighborhood and charging for that, running a business there. Is that legal? Whether or not you can stop a marijuana shop from going into your community, is that legal? Whether or not you can sue lawyers and doctors for malpractice, can you sue the government? Can you sue a police department if they make a major mistake?
Like running you over.
Or shooting you, or arresting you, and you're found not guilty.
Yeah, what happens if, Steve, what happens if you are arrested, if somebody's arrested and there's a warrant in the system, but it turns out the warrant was entered absolutely in error, should never have been entered.
Or but the typical one is the warrant is to arrest Ralph Saltzman, and they do arrest Ralph Saltzman sitting right here, except unfortunately it's not Ralph B. Saltzman, it's really Ralph Saltzman, and you're not the Ralph Saltzman they're looking for. Can you sue?
I'm glad for that.
I mean, that's an actual case. It wasn't Ralph Saltzman, but it's an actual
case. No, that does happen. Absolutely it happens. There are mistakes that get entered into the system, and a police officer pulls somebody over in a traffic stop. They go into the system to see if there are any wants or warrants, and they find one.
And what about the recent tax that we all voted on? What was it, Prop 32?
That was one, yeah.
Is that the one that raises all our state income tax?
Yes.
So can they make, as it says now, it's retroactive for all of 2012?
How can that be?
Is that legal?
We just passed it.
Should it not be legal?
Is it effective yet? Is it effective upon passage? Is it effective January 1, 2013?
Well,
and if it's effective January 1, 2013, how can they collect money as taxes for 2012?
So if you don't want to call the governor, you can call us at 1-800-405-4222. We won't ask for political donations. We'll try and resolve some of your problems. So.
Absolutely. So what's happening in the law today?
Well, today, at this very moment, there's a caller on the line, and I'd like to answer some calls.
Okay.
So why don't we go to the lines? We've told them to call in at the number that's on the screen, and let's go to the phone calls. Barbra from Santa Monica. How can we help you?
Barbara, you're on the air. Okay.
Our producer said he's trying to get trying to get it up. So,
We have a problem with the line.
all right.
Can you hear me now?
We hear
Oh,
you.
you are coming over
We hear
loud
you
and clear.
perfectly, Barbara. How are you today?
Okay, pretty good. How about
Good.
yourself?
We're doing very well.
How can we help you?
I would like to know how to subpoena records from the Parking Violations Bureau. Quickly, this is what happened. There are parking spaces throughout the county of LA where some of them are free. So you might have 1 or 2 blocks with meters, or the curb is numbered, and then you go to that parking station and you pay according to that number. This space appeared to be one of those that was free. It had no parking meter, and yet I was issued a ticket. I'd like to subpoena the Parking Violations Bureau to give me the records of how often they're issuing tickets, because I believe that they're deliberately leaving it unnumbered and no meter and just issuing tickets.
Okay, there's for parking violations, you start out not in the regular court system. You're in the quote hearing officer thing for the parking. It's not like a real judicial system.
Oh, yes, I understand that.
So-
I have a hearing date already, but I need to know how to subpoena the records
Barbara,
so
how
I
far-
can present
how far-
those at the hearing.
How far away is your hearing date?
Well,
You pick up
when they told me it might take a while, I changed the hearing date. I went into the Parking Bureau to change the hearing date, and I have not received a letter with the new date.
Okay.
You pick up the phone, you call the parking bureau, and you ask them, point blank, where do I get subpoenas? They may or may not. You may or may not have subpoena power. But if you get found guilty there, you can file for review in the Superior Court. And in the Superior Court, it's the regular courthouse. It is a de novo hearing, and in the
Which means they start again. It's
and in the Superior Court, they lodge the administrative record, but the judge can review all the evidence, and in the Superior Court, you do have subpoena powers.
in addition to that, if you don't have a hearing date, and this is the reason I was asking about that, if you don't have a hearing date now and you don't have one on the horizon, what you might do is write a letter, call it a Freedom of Information Act demand, send it to the Parking Bureau of the city that we're dealing with. I think you said LA City. Send it to them, call it a Freedom of Information Act request demand, and demand exactly the records that you're looking for. They have to respond. That's public record, and they have to respond to you.
Or the other alternative is to write a discovery request, which is a letter to the same bureau with the citation number, and specify everything you want in discovery, and you want an opportunity to review it prior to the hearing. And again, if they don't respond to that, then your due process rights are violated, and you can take that up in the court system.
And Barbara, by the way, you've now gotten 3 separate suggestions as to how to get documents. They are not mutually exclusive. You could do all 3 at the same time. And if it were me, that's exactly what I would do. I would do all 3.
Oh, really? Thank you. Well, I've been taking notes, so I've got good notes. I've written this down verbatim, and thank you so very much.
And if you call the 800 number during normal business hours, you've just gotten a lunch or dinner for 2 at a restaurant of our choice for free. Just give them the information so they can mail it to you.
And they may or may not have valet parking, so you don't even have to worry about the parking meter.
Oh, okay.
They
So
have-
the same number, call it like 9 to 5, and I will get a
right.
gift certificate?
Exactly, but not today.
You just tell them that you want a gift certificate for a restaurant and give them the information, they'll mail it back to you.
We'll get it to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Nice call, Barbara. Thank
And
you
a
very
big
much.
help. Happy holidays.
You too,
Bye-bye.
Barbara. Bye-bye.
All right.
Let's go
so-
back to the phones. Let's keep running.
Scott.
Scott.
What is happening?
All right, so I got a red light camera ticket up in here in Culver City, and I heard these cases were being dismissed, so why do I have to appear in court?
Well, you're sort of partially heard right and you're sort of partially heard wrong. The city of Los Angeles, under most circumstances, has turned off their red light cameras, and they're not giving any citations, and they're not following up on anything in regard to those.
Right, they're not prosecuting the
But
cases that have already been
There
filed.
are some City of Los Angeles red light tickets that are being given by the Sheriff's Department, which patrols the MTA,
Right.
and they have their own camera system. Each city has the right to make its own determination whether or not they're doing red light cameras. Culver City is still using the red light camera system, so that's why you got the ticket.
And that's why you have to go,
Okay.
and Scott, that's why you have to go to court. Because as Steve says, some jurisdictions are, some aren't. Culver City is, so therefore you have to go to court. And those cases are not, the camera may be automatic, but the convictions aren't.
And whether or not the red light camera system is valid and whether or not the government can prove the case against you, there are cases going both ways. And a number of months ago, the California Supreme Court, which is the highest court in California, took the case, has vacated all the lower court decisions, so there's no law on it right now. It's pending in the Supreme Court of California, and within the next year or so, we'll know whether or not all these prosecutions were valid or invalid.
Yeah, one hopes. And Scott, when you go to trial, object to all the documents, all the evidence. You may be in front of a judge who's going to sustain those objections, keep that evidence out, and then you'll be found not guilty.
And one thing you can look at is there's a website called redlightcameras.com.
Something like that.
Something,
yeah.
and it goes through all this stuff, all the objections, the things that you might consider doing. So before you go down there, you ought to do that, and you ought to do some discovery. If you look at the back of the letter you got, it gives you information about where you can go and look at all this stuff before the hearing starts. And if you've had no other tickets before, you can go to traffic school on these if you're found guilty or plead guilty.
Unless you have a commercial driver's license.
So there are lots of things you can do, and you should take advantage of them.
Actually,
Okay.
that's true. Okay, Scott.
And you get
All right.
Yeah.
Dinner or lunch at a restaurant of our choosing. Call that number during normal business hours and tell them that you want it, and we'll be glad to send it to you.
All right.
All right,
Thanks a lot.
Scott.
And good
You
luck
bet.
on your ticket.
Yeah, good luck on the ticket. Thanks for calling Legal Help Live. Scott called us at 1-800-405-4222.
So,
Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break. I mean, a really short break, and we'll be back in just a little bit. We'll be taking your calls. You'll be calling us. You'll be asking legal questions. You'll be getting gift certificates for two for dinner at a restaurant of Steve's and my choice. When we come back, which will be in a moment.
Stay tuned for more Legal Help Live.